Good afternoon. Huawei is a Chinese company and it's one of the top electronics companies in the world. And Huawei is the target of many of the semiconductor sanctions that were put in place starting about 6 years ago. But last year, Huawei introduced a new chip called the Kirin, and it surprised everyone. They weren't supposed to be able to build new semiconductor chips at all, let alone in 2023. That's specifically what the sanctions were intended to prevent. But right away, Huawei put their Kirin chip in their Mate-60 series of smartphones. The Mate-60 was introduced in the second half of 2023, and immediately it just started killing the sales of Apple's iPhones. In the first quarter of this year, Apple's China sales dropped so much that Samsung took over the top spot again for global sales of smartphones. Also last year, the Chinese government announced that Apple devices would be banned for use in Chinese government agencies, state companies, and by implication, anyone wanting to do business with the government or with state firms. These restrictions were formalized in December. Here is Bloomberg's headline about it, dated 15 December. China is the world's largest smartphone market, and Apple gets 20% of its revenues from sales here. So investors watch very carefully for anything that happens to Apple or for Apple in China. Here is Apple's stock chart in 2024 up to now, down to $167 a share from a January high of $195. So that's a $450 billion hit to Apple's market cap, and this is all because of China. So Apple was already getting hit from different directions. Huawei is now developing their own high-performance chips, and on the regulatory side, the Chinese government is telling their people not to bring an iPhone to work anymore. And Huawei's Mate-60 just blew up Apple's first quarter sales here. Now Huawei is going after them again, but this time on the top end of the market. Huawei is introducing a new model of smartphone called the Pura 70. The Pura, though, is very different, very surprising, and this is a major departure from Chinese smartphones in the past because it is clearly priced to compete directly with Apple's iPhone 15. Chinese smartphone makers compete with Apple on price. They offer similar product features but sell at a much lower price than the iPhone. Apple makes much more profit per device because their prices are so much higher, but they leave the budget market to other device makers. And that was where Huawei used to be too, priced far below the iPhone, but with comparable features. But here, Huawei is saying to the market that the Pura 70 is as good as the iPhone, and there is no discounting for buying our product instead. Here is the base model, 5499 RMB compared to the iPhone 15's 5999 RMB. That's about a $70 difference, 500 RMB. That's a 9% discount on the base model. Usually though, the base models are a 30 to 40% discount to the iPhone. Here it's only 9. And working up the Pura models, the 70 Ultra is the same price as iPhone's Pro Max. This is zero hedge, and their take is the same, which is that Huawei is now competing on quality and features, which is how Apple likes to differentiate itself. Apple has always said you're paying more but getting more. Now Huawei is saying the same thing. So the new Huawei Pura is not competing with Apple on price, but on quality and features. And here's Bloomberg again, and they reference Huawei's Mate-60, which surprised the market last year because of the sanctions, and how, bottom paragraph, the Mate-60 contributed to a major decline in iPhone sales here. Huawei now has the Mate-60 on the market, which is already killing Apple on the low end. And now the Pura is going after high-end users too, buyers who are not price sensitive. And don't forget, someone who wants to work with or do business with or for a major Chinese company, and there are lots of those all over the world, those people aren't going to be buying iPhones anymore. Have a great weekend. Be good.
Peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Let your light shine before men, so they see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven.